Back in Wisconsin, the Dane County election clerk is a man named Scott McDonald. Dane County is one of two Wisconsin counties where Trump demanded a recount in 2020. Not coincidentally, both are Democratic counties in a deeply purple state. Earlier this week, I traveled to Wisconsin to talk to Scott McDonald to find out why exactly he's so worried. When did you start doing this job?
10 years ago.
And what was it like 10 years ago, this job?
Oh, it was great. We had the first same-sex marriage license done here. We do marriages out on the front of the steps, and it was fun. But it's become sort of a darker version of that now. I am worried about my staff. I'm worried about the staff across the hall. That's the city clerk's office.
Yeah.
There isn't adequate security in this building. This building wasn't set up to be secure. It was set up to be open.
Yeah.
I mean, your own staff was glad that they could just walk right in. I'm like, well, that's kind of the problem. They didn't have to go through weapons screening. And that's a good thing. That's an open government. But for us, you can't just be able to walk in off the street and come all the way back to my office like you used to be able to do. We have Stop the Steal rallies a block away.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be hard to just point that down here at our office. So.
Have you received death threats?
I've gotten some vague ones.
What are vague death threats?
Oh, like you should, you've committed sedition. There's a lot of that, but they're just vague enough. When you talk to the police, they're always like, it almost feels like a game of Clue. Like they have to have an iron pipe in the billiards room or something, and they have to tell you the time they're going to attack you for them to listen to it. But that's been a problem for clerks around the country. But they're just vague enough that nothing happens with them.
Do you worry about your safety? Do you worry about the safety of your colleagues?
It's more like Russian roulette because it seems like something has to happen that ties to this place. Because I remember one time the president tweeted about my office, but he didn't say anything negative, and it felt like a click in a chamber, like it just missed, nothing happened. But then in another county or another place in the state, it'll all focus in on that person. There'll be some accusation of fraud that was either an innocent mistake or they don't understand how it works. So it just seems to be like it will congregate in a location. You don't know when or where it's going to be. Although you do know it's going to be in a swing state.
Yeah.
And it's going to be probably in the Democratic areas of those swing states. It's been kind of quiet. It's like a quiet before a storm is how it is right now. Because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, typically if they win, the election deniers win, then it was fine.
Right.
That's how it works. And then if it's a close election, then suddenly they'll find problems with it and try to dispute it. That seems to be the pattern now.
This period we are now in is what Scott McDonald calls the quiet before the storm. Over the last several months, he and other county clerks and election officials have gone through specialized training courses for the first time ever, so they know what to do if someone wants to carry out on their threats. They've learned some skills that will hopefully help them de-escalate any situation that becomes dangerous. And they've learned how to do that in person. People are so incensed that these clerks are worried that firearms are going to come into the equation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Wisconsin, a lot of states in the Midwest are pretty heavily armed, so.
Wow. Reasoning with an enraged person is not possible. Okay, so what does that mean? So what do you do?
So you try to repeat back what they're upset about and try to work with them on possible solutions that is not telling them that they're wrong.
That's kind of difficult, right? Because the essence of this is that they are wrong about what they think.
Right, but what's frustrating to me and a lot of clerks is a lot of these citizens, they genuinely believe what they're saying.
Right.
They've been misled and they're upset. And they think something's happening to their country. And so there is some sympathy for that because, all of us want to make sure the election is fair and free.
Right.
We kind of agree with their base concern. It's just that they've been lied to by grifters.
Okay, so this is like escort them into an area where you're not in a group situation.
Yeah.
Communicate the process. Never attempt to de-escalate a potentially violent situation without calling for backup. It says know how to signal for help from other staff without escalating the crisis. So do you have a secret signal?
Well, part of it now is having that plexiglass so they can't just waltz in here. That was same across the hall. It was so easy for people to just come in and jump a counter before. So number one is now at least we have a barrier, but we do have panic buttons all over now. That's a new feature from.
You have panic buttons.
Oh yeah.
I just have to stop and note that, like, this is the county clerk's office and you have plexiglass and panic buttons. Like, what has happened to American democracy?
Yeah, it's not a good sign.
These are people who are involved in the running of government and elections. Like, this requires a totally different set of skills to manage, an incredibly stressful situation, but then also resolve it. Like, That's a lot to ask of a clerk. What is the general emotional, like, tenor of people who come here and are really angry? Like, I would assume they're all, like, kind of...
Yeah, to this office we haven't gotten much of that. It was at the recount, it was really on full display.
Yeah.
They were closed arms, red-faced, yelling, not listening. And honestly, what helped us was that the Trump lawyers just wanted to get out of there and go to the court. So they were helpful in de-escalation because they just were trying to
get to the
invalidate thousands of our ballots and get to the Supreme Court. So the yelling wasn't really in their interest.
Escalating behavior, change in voice, heavy breathing, sneering or use of abusive language, glaring or avoiding eye contact. I mean, this sounds terrifying, I have to say. Like, I am listening to this, I'm reading this thinking like that, I would just want to extricate myself from that situation. Do clerks say, hey, wait a second, I'm just not going to deal with this? I mean, if they're still working, are there any that are like, yeah, no, thank you. I'm not gonna. I'll just hand this off to someone else. I mean, I just can imagine wanting to just tap out.
Well, there's two things. Often this doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
So for most clerks, they're worrying about it, but they haven't had something too terrible. Maybe someone is a little bit angry, but they get them when they have to pay their taxes or they get a reset. So they get this in other areas. But the other thing is they are so dedicated to their job. I mean, they love their job. They take it seriously. And they know it's important.
How responsive has law enforcement been to your concerns about threats that you may be facing?
Well, they've been helpful. I think part of the problem, though, is that they deal with people getting threatened all day long. Yeah. So when they hear, I got a threat on email from a Proton email that you can't trace, it's hard for them to do a lot about it. And for them, it's kind of common. But what I try to explain to them is, but it's meant to destabilize our democracy. Because if people leave who know what they're doing, who are they replaced by?
Right.
And then what happens? They make mistakes, and it just continues to fuel the cycle of, we have a scandal. See, it's all messed up, or it's fraud. And that serves, again, the interest of raising money online or intimidating election officials.